The year is 1992. I've just picked up my copy of PC Gamer and flicked to the back and gone to the section with a review roundup. That's what this video is, Glenn.
Pretty much, and fittingly so, a lot of the games do have a retro vibe or some sort of inspiration to them. We've got 3 games to review, all of which have released in the last month or so. So which games are we reviewing? Well, let's find out.
Now, I didn't realise that Witchspring R was actually developed by just 2 people, a small Korean team called Kiwi Walks. This episode was sponsored by the excellent Witchspring R. I don't know if you remember, we did a full dedicated video on this one, and it's massively underappreciated in our opinion. There's also a Nintendo Switch sale that's going to start on December the 13th and run all the way through till December the 26th, as well as a sale for the PlayStation 5 version celebrating the PlayStation 30th anniversary, and that goes on until December the 20th. That takes it down 20% across the board, which is the cheapest it's ever been available. I'll pop links down in the description and the top pinned comment. A really easy recommendation. Absolutely brilliant RPG where you play as the protagonist Pieberry and she can progress in different weapons to suit your own playstyle. It also has like a monster collecting mechanic. There are about 20 different types that you can have. I had this awesome little warthog that I was riding around on, and there are options to make battles less time consuming, like being able to skip most of them just to speed through to the conclusion, as well as things like a quick hunt feature. They're just quality of life things you don't very often find, but you really should. It's got variable difficulty settings and a full voiceover in both Korean and Japanese. There's a reason this one's got overwhelmingly positive Steam ratings and why we absolutely love it. Go check it out, there'll be links in the description and the top pinned comment. Got to support a team of just 2 putting out quality like this. Great game.
First up then, we've got Little Big Adventure Twinson's Quest. I'm really glad that we can get a review of this one out, as a big fan of the original release. Now, they've remade the game entirely. It has a slightly altered storyline. This time around, you're actually trying to save your sister rather than your missus. So things are a little different in that regard, but you're still battling against Dr. Funfrock. But I do find it a little bit odd that they have changed that core storyline, just because it was so iconic and it was quite a unique way of doing things at the time. Not just the fact that you're looking for your missus, because that's not at all unique, but the way the dictatorship worked. It feels a tiny little bit like they've watered that down. Gameplay has also seen a number of changes. Now, in the original, you had 4 different modes: stealth, active, aggressive, and just normal walking. They've refined that to make it all inclusive in one control package, and that is much better. You still have your magic ball that you can throw around, but this time around there's a button to actually aim that at enemies. That's also a good choice. But the magic ball mechanic still feels as fiddly as it ever did. Hitting enemies is hit and miss, and perhaps if they were going to change some things, that might have been the area to look at. They have been very faithful to the original. The world itself is almost a one-to-one replica, but with some quality of life improvements. Some of the puzzles are also more easily accessible, but the overall gameplay does show its age in some aspects, and it always had this mechanic where you could get captured and thrown into jail. And I think for people approaching it for the first time, it will feel a little bit clunky how that takes place. Now, overall, I do think it is still an enjoyable experience. There's a feeling of emergent gameplay at times where NPCs will help you get past guards, and the quests that you undertake are all tied heavily to the main storyline in quite a sensible way. Potentially a game that will appeal more to fans of the original. Now, in terms of visuals and performance as well as audio, I think it looks absolutely stunning. I think they've done a great job here. It runs well on the Nintendo Switch. As I say, it's almost 1-for-1 from the original game, but just with a real lick of paint, but also some care and attention. You've still got the exact same layouts, the same character interactions. It just all looks so nice. It almost has a diorama feel to it, but there are also some new moments in there. Perhaps a little work's been done on the physics of your character. The way that you run and jump feels very smooth, and I'm really pleased that they've managed to keep the flavour of the original when it comes to the visuals. The soundtrack as well is very good. There's voice acting in here. It was actually one of the earliest games to have the voice acted intro cutscene. I remember playing it on my PC. I think it came with the dawn of CD. And I'd say that the soundtrack overall is probably one of the strongest areas. Even the magic ball having the same sound effect I think was a good choice. This one's retailing at £24.99 or your regional equivalent. There is a physical available that I am going to be buying for Christmas, and I think the price is reflective of the amount of work they've put in. The reason I say that is I was actually a beta tester for this, so I saw the stages of development and how much they were trying to get it to a stage that would please both fans and new players. It is a shame that a few people have had performance issues with this game on the Nintendo Switch and on other platforms, and also the slightly higher price is an issue, and I don't like the fact that they changed the story. I've still enjoyed my time with it, but I don't think it'll be for everyone. Little Big Adventure Twinson's Quest gets a SwitchUp score of 75%.
Next then we've got Retro Realms. Now this released about a month ago now, and it has a few different ways in how you can access it or purchase it. So we'll go through that first and then look at the games themselves. So the actual Retro Realms arcade you can download for free. This serves as almost like a hub area to facilitate the playing of the games themselves. You play it in a first-person view and can walk around the arcade. Achievements that you unlock within game will be displayed here as trophies. There's also a room you can go into and watch videotapes, VHS tapes of interviews with developers, for example, and the actual arcade machines of the games you're going to play are housed here too. Now the games themselves you can buy separately or you can buy as a bundle, with the two games at the moment being Halloween and Ash vs the Evil Dead, both of course based on popular horror franchises. The two games play quite similarly to each other. They were developed by WayForward, and it does feel like some of their previous works, things like The Mummy Demastered, Alien Infestation on the DS, the Shantae series. You can kind of see the DNA of all of those games in these new releases. You'll play as either Michael Myers in Halloween or Ash Williams in the Ash vs Evil Dead, although you can have other characters that are included on the physical version of the game. I know that much because I bought it, and you can use these across any of the games. So you could use Michael Myers in the Evil Dead game, for example. It's level based. You'll play in a quite linear fashion, using your signature weapon to get through a horde of enemies, and it also has an interesting mechanic where you'll switch between the real world and like a demon realm, and this will be home to other enemies that you'll need to defeat, but it's also the way that you have to advance through the stages at times, using each realm to open up pathways. A bit like in Mighty Switch Force, which I think was also a WayForward game. There are collectibles to find, and these will be shown when you complete a level, giving you some urgency to go back and try again. And there are bosses to fight too. These are pretty tough and were enjoyable. You know, you'll spend a few moments trying to defeat them and lose a few lives for sure, but it does feel satisfying when you finally overcome them. Control-wise, everything works well. It plays as quite a classic 2D platformer. There'll be nothing here to surprise anyone that's played one of those before, and it's nice and responsive. Moving on to the visuals and the audio, and it's classic WayForward fare really, with that really nice pixel style. Looks very high-end. I say this a lot. It looks like a game that could feasibly have existed years ago, but technically it wouldn't have looked as good.
I will say, having seen you play a bit of this one, WayForward are funny, aren't they? Because sometimes they do have that amazing quality, and at other times they can do IP games that don't look nearly as good as this.
Yeah, it feels as if they've got a couple of teams within house that handle certain IPs, and whilst this is obviously licensed, it's got that high quality feel to it. The levels all have a distinct feel and are based on places within the films or the franchises, which is nice to see. So for example, in the Halloween game, you'll start off in the penitentiary, and the next level is the garage. Is it Phelps Garage? Something like that, where in the movies he picked up his iconic jumpsuit. So it's nice to see them following that almost trail of breadcrumbs of the story through the films. Audio-wise, it has a high-octane nature and does suit the gameplay very well. There is also a nice use of John Carpenter's Halloween score found in that particular game, used in the character select screen and the shop menus. The one thing I will say is there's not a huge amount of variety across games. Now, if you're only buying one of them, that doesn't matter. If you're buying it as a 2-pack, you will notice this if you play them one after the other. On to value then, and I'm going to judge it on the double pack because that's the one I purchased. On the eShop, which is what we go by, incredibly this sells for £45, which is quite eye-watering to be perfectly honest. Now my physical version, which does include both games and those extra characters, cost me £29.99, which I feel is much more palatable, but going by that eShop price, it is going to lose marks here because it's just too expensive. I think the games are £22.49 each, which means that the double pack doesn't even make sense because you'll pay 2p more for buying it as a double pack. I just think someone fell asleep when pressing go and doing the prices for the eShop, to be perfectly honest. Now, I will say the quality of the games is good and the enjoyment factor is high, but even with that in mind, I can't justify this high price. There's also the fact that I'm assuming the idea is that they'll add further games to this series with other horror characters, and whilst I love that idea, having a Nightmare on Elm Street one, for example, would be brilliant. It'd be great to see what the demon realm would be there. Maybe it would be like his nightmare world, that'd be great. But if they're going to charge £22.50 a time, and obviously by this point the physical version's already out and doesn't have it included, yeah, there's some issues there. I'm not sure they thought all the way through. Retro Realms gets a SwitchUp score of 76%.
We're going to finish up with a full review of Core Keeper. Now, we were both really into this one when we played it for our sponsored video and decided that, yeah, it deserved a full SwitchUp score. Your characters are drawn towards a mysterious relic, and you find yourself trapped underground, having to essentially use your survival skills to not only stay alive, but also to figure out these unusual statues that surround the player. Gameplay-wise, well, there's a lot to say, but here's a brief summary.
It's essentially a survival game, I guess is the best way to describe it, where you'll be going out and foraging resources to then create new armour or weapons to defend yourself against the horde of enemies that you'll come across as you explore.
It uses a heavy light and dark mechanic, so crafting torches becomes essential for progression. You can place those down, stick them up on a wall to light the different areas, and as you push into different biomes, you'll face a number of different enemies. And we played all of this together in co-op, but it isn't local co-op.
Yes, the biggest negative I would say of the game is the fact that you can only play it in online if you want to play multiplayer. Moving back to the gameplay itself, and before you get into the game, you can create a character. It's more the character class that's the important part, as the class that you choose will determine which weapon or item, I should say, that you start the game with.
Yep, this ties into the light and dark because I had a torch, whereas Glen had a sword. You can see how that worked.
Yeah, absolutely. When it comes to crafting, once you have done a bit of foraging, you'll be crafting from the very bottom up, so you'll need to create a workbench, but then you'll need to create further workbenches for copper or tin or whatever it is that you're finding, and this will allow you to create stronger armour. And as well as this, you also are given attribute points for any basic tasks that you carry out. As simple as running around will earn you points in that particular section, and you can then add these into the skill tree to grant yourself further perks or passive skills.
Yeah, I think in that regard, that's what really makes Core Keeper stand out from many of its contemporaries, is how deep the skill system is, but also how passive it is. It just happens in the background as you play the game, much like some of the classics. Things like Morrowind and Skyrim, you do the skills, you get better at the skills. You don't have to concentrate on doing the skill.
Absolutely. As you play, you'll encounter bosses, for example, and the ultimate aim is to fuel the statues that we mentioned right at the start to power up that home area. But you can play a lot of it without ever really giving this much thought. Now, if you want to progress, obviously you'll need to address these at some point, but you could spend hours just doing what you want to do and enjoying the world around you.
And what he means by that is me building an amazing base with lots of nice walls in the way and doors and a lovely looking ground area and some beds.
Absolutely, it was lovely looking. Practical wise, not so much, but yeah. And also you can farm and create recipes that you can then bring out with you to restore your health. And if you do die, you'll need to go and collect your resources that you had on your backpack, say. Otherwise they'll disappear, so it's kind of back into the fray to rescue those.
Absolutely. I didn't get to test that one out, but I think you did.
Once or twice, yeah. 3 or 4.
Visually, the game does look very nice indeed. It has lovely light and dark mechanics using 3D lighting systems that are actually quite deceptive. It looks simple, but actually there's a lot going on underneath the hood. It runs okay, but in some of the later areas it can stutter a little.
There were some stutters, yeah, absolutely, but the general aesthetic is lovely. It makes a great use of its pixel art, and as Mark mentioned, the lighting in particular is quite a treat. Audio-wise, it goes for quite an unusual route in terms of what's happening on screen. It's very calm for a lot of the time, almost melancholic in what you're hearing, but it does work, doesn't it?
It really does. Yeah, I mentioned in our other video that it is like the Morrowind menu music,
right?
And someone went out and instantly purchased it because of that. It's just not an area that you usually see as a standout in these types of games. I think in fairness, Minecraft has it dialed. It's got a very iconic soundtrack. And the same can be said here. This is excellent, top tier.
Moving on to value then, and Core Keeper will cost you £15.99 and regional equivalents again are on your screen. I'll be honest, I assumed this was going to be 20 odd pound.
Yeah.
You know, that's the number that came to my head when I was playing. And at this price, you could get a huge amount of time out of this game. You know, if you just lose yourself in the world, you could easily get over 100 hours for sure.
Yeah, that's an incredibly good price, really. For the genre as well, for any metric, it's great value.
I would say so. The only downside really is that lack of local multiplayer. I think that does hurt the game because someone else will have to own it. But that aside, yeah, very good value for money. Core Keeper gets a SwitchUp score of 87%. So there you have it. There are 3 reviews of games that released recently. Did you pick these up? What do you make of them? Let us know in the comments section below. Don't forget, if you're looking for eShop credit to pick any of these games up, you can use our website switchup.gg to get your eShop cards and to get yourself 5% of your purchase price back as cash back. There's also a link down there to Play Asia if you're looking to import any games. Again, use the link and the code and you get yourself 5% off your order from there. A quick thank you to our patrons and our channel members for your continued support, and to each and every one of you for watching our videos. Take care, and until next time, happy gaming.